My name is Zach Arnold. I'm a Hollywood film and television editor, a documentary director, father of two, and creator of Optimize Yourself. Since beginning my career, I have battled attention issues, anxiety, and creative burnout more times than I can keep track of. Back in 2005, after almost losing the battle with suicidal depression, I decided that I no longer wanted to sacrifice myself for the sake of my career. I was done barely surviving. I wanted to thrive. Since then, I have obsessively searched for every possible way to optimize my own creative performance. My journey is far from complete, but I have now made it my mission to shorten your learning curve so you can forge your own path to greatness without having to sacrifice balance in the process. Now it's time to start designing the optimized version of you. Hello, and welcome to episode number 6 of the Optimize Yourself podcast. If you're a first-time listener, I'm grateful to have you with me, and I appreciate you taking the time to focus on finding just a little work-life balance and sanity in this crazy world that we live in. And hey, if you're a long-time listener from my previous podcast, welcome to my brand new show. Either way, if you enjoyed this podcast and you're inspired to learn more and listen more, I invite you to subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or whatever app you prefer, because I have tons of great guests, giveaways, and free training coming your way on a weekly basis. Just visit optimizeyourself.me/subscribe for more info, or you can subscribe directly in your app of choice. If you've ever found yourself stumbling to reach the finish line and you often fail to achieve your most important goals, and don't worry, you're no different than the 92% of people who also don't achieve their goals. The problem isn't you. It isn't your lack of willpower, and it's not because you aren't motivated. The problem is that you haven't properly defined your purpose. I am incredibly excited about today's interview because it is with none other than the Tony Horton, one of the top personal trainers and fitness celebrities in the world who created P90X, the most successful home fitness program on the planet. He also designed the rest of the P90X series, P90, and 22-Minute Hardcore, just to name a few of his many programs. But more importantly than his fitness accomplishments and his business enterprises, I'm excited to have Tony on this program because he is one of the most inspirational people that I know, and he is one of the few quote-unquote celebrities that I actually consider a virtual mentor and admire. Rarely does a day go by when Tony's work doesn't influence me in one way or another, whether it's being inspired by his book, The Big Picture, to originally begin this podcast over 3 years ago, or, getting yelled at by him at 6:30 every morning while doing burpees. In our conversation, we talk all about another of Tony's passions, which is helping people find their purpose. We talk through the negative mindsets that many people create to stop them from achieving their goals and how to overcome those obstacles and barriers. So even if you have absolutely no interest whatsoever in taking on a fitness program, this conversation could change the way that you approach your goals and inspire you to step outside your comfort zone to become a better version of you. If this interview inspires you to take action, I invite you to download my brand new Ultimate Guide to Optimizing Your Creativity, which contains plenty of concrete action steps that you can take right away to increase your energy and focus by moving more throughout your workday, productivity tips and strategies that can help you work smarter and not harder, and many easy wins to help you eat better, sleep better, and manage stress like a Zen monk. Because you can't be creative if you're constantly exhausted and burned out. To download this ultimate guide 100% free, simply visit optimizeyourself.me/ultimate guide and I will send it to your inbox immediately. Okay, I know that you're probably anxious to jump into the interview, but I do have one last quick favor to ask of you. And taking just 2 minutes would mean the world to me, and it would help expose this program to more people that it can inspire. As my longtime listeners know, my previous podcast, Fitness and Post, had over 100 5-star reviews in iTunes, but now that I've renamed the show, I am back to 0. Thank you very much, Apple. It took me 3 years to earn those 100 5-star reviews, but now my goal is to get this show up to 100 5-star reviews in the next 3 months by the end of November. And with your help, I know that we can do it together. So if you leave an honest review of the show on iTunes, and I'm heavily stressing the word honest, you are going to be eligible to win either a TopoMat, a Topo Mini, a human charger device, or a private 1-hour coaching session via Skype with yours truly. I'm going to be giving away these prizes for the months of September, October, and November. So your one review gives you 3 chances to win, and if you don't win, your entries carry over to the next month until the giveaways are complete. And on top of this, I also have several ways that you can earn even more bonus entries. To leave your honest review and register for this contest, just visit optimizeyourself.me/win. And thank you so much in advance for your support. And now, without further ado, after a brief break to recognize our sponsors, my interview with Tony Horton. To access the show notes for this episode, please visit optimizeyourself.me/episode06. That's the word episode and the numbers 06. This episode is made possible by ErgoDriven, the makers of the Topo Mat and Topo Mini, my number one recommendations for anybody interested in moving more at their height adjustable workstation. Listen, standing desks are only great if you're standing well. Otherwise, you're constantly fighting fatigue and chronic pain. Not like any other anti-fatigue mat, the Topo is scientifically proven to help you move more throughout the day, which helps reduce discomfort and also increase your focus and productivity. And they're really fun and a great conversation starter too. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/topo. That's TOPO. This episode is made possible by the Human Charger, a revolutionary new light therapy device made specifically for people who spend long days in the dark and don't get enough sunlight, i.e. you and me. Simply put in the earbuds for 12 minutes a day to receive your daily recommended dosage of UV-free white light. Doing so can drastically increase your energy, improve your mood, and increase mental alertness and focus. This device has literally changed my life, and I use it every morning without fail. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/humancharger, and you can use the code OPTIMIZE to get 20% off your order. I'm here today with none other than the Tony Horton, and I'm going to immediately drop a bombshell on my audience by letting them know that I'm speaking to potentially the laziest man on earth that, according to his wife, doesn't like to exercise. So, Tony, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Zach, how are you? Man, it's great to be here. I was going to say this morning, but I don't know if it's when people hear this, it'll be in the morning. But thank you. Yeah, the laziest man on earth who hates to exercise. That's a little hyperbole, but I would say that it's close. You know, I mean, most days I'm not that into it.
Yeah, well, and I'm basically using your words. And obviously, I'm making a joke because you're, one of the fittest men on the planet, super motivational, have accomplished great things. But you're self-deprecating, which is one of the reasons I love you. In your own introduction of your own course, you're like, listen, I'm a lazy guy. I'm a regular guy. Like, I want to find some work-life balance and not push myself all the time. Like, that's why I gravitate to you. Like, and if I don't have the energy to get all the way through to the end of the show, it's because I just cranked out a bunch of 22-minute hardcore, which we'll get into a little bit because I want to make sure that people know about that program, which is quite possibly becoming one of my favorite programs of yours. And I've been around since the short shorts. I just want to make that very clear. I've been around since the original, the Power 90, P90X, P90X2, P90X3. Like, I've been around for a while, gone through all these programs and 22-minute hardcores. Like, I remember doing P90X3, doing the Warrior, and saying, man, if there were like a whole program that were just like the Warrior, that would be awesome. And then I saw 22-minute hardcore. I'm like, oh, he did it.
Found it.
I found it. But anyway, I don't want to go too deep into the specifics of your exercise programs today. The reason I really want you on the show is because I want to help people listening get started. That first step is often so difficult for people. They feel overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. There are so many gurus and experts telling them how they're supposed to do it, the steps that they're supposed to follow. And I don't really ascribe to that philosophy. And I feel like getting started is simple, but it's not easy. And you've really kind of helped hone that formula and find a way to do it realistically. So let's just start talking a little bit about your brand new course, Living Large, and what steps people can take to just get started towards whatever their journey is. Maybe it's weight loss, maybe it's diet, whatever it might be. How do people get started?
Well, if you look at my course, I'm glad you brought that up. It's called Living Large. I was up in Portland with Brendan Bouchard. A lot of people don't know who Brendan is, but, Brendan is the #1 online course developer in the world. He's worked with Oprah and Tony Robbins and Chalene Johnson and Usher and Larry King and Ariana Huffington and me, lucky me. And, Brendan had read my book, The Big Picture, and he said, hey, there's a course in there and let's pull out, 6 different sections of the book and break them down into lessons, maybe elaborate a little bit more when it comes to, what people need to do to kind of move forward, and so, there's variety, consistency, intensity, rest and relaxation, progression, there's the basic things that someone would need to be able to get unstuck in whatever category of their life it is. Maybe it's food or fitness or career or family or, learning how to just sort of enjoy life more, more love, laughter, and happiness, and just sort of making decisions, real decisions about what it is you need to do, and look at these categories and really, try to find an emotional attachment to parts of your life that are missing, when there's an emptiness there and it's been sitting there maybe forever, at least decades, and begin to sort of attack it, But I would say in a more simplistic way, I think so many people are, when you say getting started, it really depends on what it is that they are missing. I did an event at the Omega Institute in upstate New York. I sat everybody down. There was about 80 people and everybody paired off. Each person was asked for 2.5 minutes to sort of look at one of those categories. Maybe it was exercise. Maybe it was their nutrition. Maybe it was, their career. Maybe it was just to sort of learn to relax more and enjoy life more and laugh more and just sort of, be more present. That's kind of a thing. And so to really look at one of those categories and talk to their partner for 2.5 minutes and basically say to them, why have you ignored one of these different categories of your life, and the other person was just there to listen. They weren't even supposed to talk, and so after 2.5 minutes, you sort of reverse your roles, and the other person is explaining which one they picked. And then again, for another 2.5 minutes, go back to the first person, and that person pretty much expresses the emotional things that come up based on the fact that it's been ignored for so many years. Really go a little bit deeper, and then you go back and forth. And then sort of, I won't go through the whole process. It'll take too long. But in the end, you're looking at your partner and you're basically saying, okay, in the course of the next 7 days, what 3 action steps will I take to get after this? And they also had the option to connect with their partner after the weekend was over, because, it's a 3-day event and it's over on Sunday and then you're off to your real life. And then, you can have this really great, you used the word satori before we started recording this, but, what was that sort of on switch, that tipping point, that moment where you went, oh my gosh, people just don't have it because they don't have any accountability. Of course, I talk about accountability in my course, The Big Picture. And so your obligation, if you'd like, is to stay connected with that person for the next 7 days. And so on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you're supposed to say to them, hey, I made the phone call, I wrote the email, I went to the meeting, I threw out all the, junk food in the pantry, whatever it is. And so I asked these folks, I said, after that first week, look, how will you continue to stay accountable with that person, that sort of accountability person? And this is just one example of a lesson that we did at an event. And people really liked it because it's, it basically shoved it right in their face. I've been to so many events before where I'll do a workout and then I'll do a little seminar based on my book. And then I'll do a Q&A, take some photographs and sign some autographs and leave. And 99.9% of the people that were there at that event will just go, well, that was nice, but nothing really happened afterward. Like, I'll come back year after year, see the same people, and they're still overweight, they're still miserable, and they still have a crappy job. I'm thinking, well, why do you come to these events if nothing improves? The whole idea is to basically take in more information and make sure that there's some form of application. And, getting back to your original question, how do people get started? Well, the worst kind of advice to give is the kind that's never been asked for in the first place. So there's nothing that you and I can do to help people unless they want to be helped. And so, when I look at my own experience, my own life, I was always just very curious. I hated the place that I was in. I hated being broke. I hated being out of shape. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't even hate it because I didn't know anything about it. But I was just eating whatever. But somewhere along the line, because I was reading books by Deepak Chopra and Andrew Weil and Gary Zukav and Richard Carlson and John Rady, and, the list goes on and on and on. I was just sort of a personal development person early on because I didn't get that in school. I didn't get that in elementary school or junior high school or college. It just didn't exist. It was all reading, writing, and arithmetic and things you didn't really need. Obviously, there were some things you needed to know how to do. You needed to know how to speak to people. You needed to know how to understand English and write it. You know what I mean? But a lot of it just wasn't practical as a person who wanted to improve their life. And so I had to go to an outside source, and that was all these personal development books. And then certainly later on, I discovered that a lot of these people were doing seminars. I went to a seminar called Temenos and versions of Est and others. And, some of them were more spiritual. Some of them were more relationship. A lot of them were more designed for career. I was just gathering intel, you know what I mean? And I understood early on as I was gathering this intel that it wasn't going to happen overnight, you know what I mean? And as I was gathering different things from the spiritual end of the spectrum to the more, practical stuff that was more about just, improving the quality of my life, learning that if I ate better, learning if I exercised, learning if I, started hanging around different people, because a lot of the people in my life were just too much about hanging out and partying and just, doing your crap job and then kind of blowing it out over the weekend. There's still so many people that still live that life that can't figure out why they're not living larger. And so for me, it was a slow burn, it was like a 20-year intel gathering process and slowly beginning to apply some of the things that I was learning and discarding a lot of the things that, theoretically were supposed to help me, but didn't apply to me. So I was pretty good at sort of picking and choosing what I liked, what worked, what didn't, what helped move me forward, what didn't help me at all. And, I just had to go back. I call it personal development school. I was just in school. People usually go to school because they have to, because your mom and your dad, pack your lunch and dress you and send you off. And then, you go to first grade and hopefully you get through that. You go to second grade and third grade. I mean, think how many, there's 12 years of that stuff. And then if you want to and get, move on, there's 4 more. And if you want to do that, there's 4 to 6 more on top of that, when it comes to grad school and beyond. And so for some reason, a lot of us think we don't have to keep learning anything after high school or college. And, if there isn't a continual learning process beyond those initial years as a child and young adult, well, there's no surprise that things aren't going to improve. Because people think they know it all after high school and college. I got it figured out. I'm done. I'm an adult. I make a living, but there's still this emptiness and there's this sadness and there's this depression and there's this sense that they haven't really fulfilled their purpose because maybe they were doing it for all the wrong reasons, or they just figured that was enough. I rent, or I have a car, I own a home, and I make a decent living, but still there's this sort of emptiness. And if exercise and decent food have not been part of the equation, well, it's quite obvious that you're going to have some kind of physical, mental, and emotional disorder. It just is what it is, because your body ages. And if you're not, creating some sort of resistance, doing some kind of cardiovascular exercise, doing some sort of yoga, stretching, or Pilates, then there's going to be these physical ailments that can turn into physical pain that will create a mental and emotional state that is not what you anticipated. And so somewhere along the line, you've got to find some mentor, teacher, coach, guru, book, seminar that turns that around. And if you don't, well, then, your 30s become your 40s, become your 50s, become your 60s. And then the law of human nature is that when you get into your early 60s to mid 60s, you blew it. Because quite often, without being too cliche, quite often old dogs don't learn new tricks. It just becomes harder and harder and harder because everything is sort of your mental and emotional and physical being, your behavior, your history, everything about it means that you are who you are, and it's so augured in that it's really difficult to change. Not to say that you can't. Not to say that anybody can. I mean, there's so many stories, you can just Google them. People decided to get their high school degree or college degree in their 70s or 80s. It's out there, but it's such an anomaly. It's just so rare. There's not a whole lot of folks who've actually had that experience. So, I don't know what your demographic is with your audience, but I was in Las Vegas at the Idea World Convention. It's an international fitness convention, and I got the Jack LaLanne Award there last year. I was actually handed the Jack LaLanne Award by Lala Lelaine, that's Elaine Lelaine, which is the greatest name in the world, herself. This is Jack's wife. Jack died at 96, so I don't know, about 6 years ago. Lala Lelaine is 91, and we did a little push-up together on stage last year when she was 90. And they gave me the Jack LaLanne Award, and it was, it's just so amazing, And so what happens is you go to these events and you meet two kinds of people. People that want to come up to you and say, hey, man, I've done your program, but I'm off the wagon. I was on, I was off, and now I'm really out of shape again. It's kind of embarrassed to shake your hand. You look at the person, you think, oh, okay, well, that's unfortunate. You say, well, what do you weigh now, or what's your physical state now? And they say, oh, I'm up to 230. And I said, well, you look at somebody who's like 5'9", and you go, all right, well, what did you weigh before the program? Well, I weighed about 210, and I got down to about 185. And you think to yourself, well, you know what to do. It's not like you're a neophyte. It's not like you're somebody who's completely clueless. You know what to do. You did it. You had the success. You felt better, and then something triggered, this new state that you're in. And I just feel so sorry for people. I think, how can you not? It's like learning how to eat food and then forgetting how to eat food, or it's learning that getting a decent night's sleep is going to just help you recover every day, and then deciding that 5 hours is enough, and you can't figure out why you're so wasted and so exhausted, and you have no energy to have the discipline to exercise better. You don't even have the energy to get up a set of stairs, And so I asked the guy, I said, well, why? He goes, well, I had a kid, and or the next one, you talk to the next person, oh, I separated from my wife, or I blah, 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 So, and what's amazing is that whenever people have any sort of difficulty in their life at whatever level, something really simple of like flunking a test or getting in a car accident, nobody gets hurt or whatever it is, or something really traumatic, there's a death in the family, or your wife is divorcing you, or your husband's leaving you, or whatever it is that people end up just doing the worst thing imaginable to make their situation worse. As opposed to like me, when something rough happens to me, man, I work out like a beast. You know what I mean? And I drink more water, and I go to sleep, and I make sure that I double up on doing everything right so I can get through this period of my life. And so again, getting back to your original question, how do you get people started? You've got to be curious. Number one, you've got to be willing to get into personal development school. And where do you start? Doesn't matter. Pick up the book, Google personal development, top 10 personal development books. They will pop up on your screen. Or you ask around, you ask people in your life that that seem to be doing a little bit better than you, and ask them, how did you do it? How did you end up making this kind of money? How did you end up losing this weight? How did you end up finding the woman of your dreams? And just do what they did. Don't overthink it. You know what I mean? Just dive in the damn pool and get wet. All right. And then if you don't like getting wet in that pool, get out of that pool and dive in another pool. Go have an experience. Go build a history. Just the simple act of doing that will change your mental and emotional state immediately. You know what I mean? And if you're not curious, you don't feel like doing that, well, then I can't help you, man. People come up to me and say, God, my brother, my sister, my father, my mother, my best buddy, they don't seem to want to do what I did. They don't. And I said, are they coming to you for advice? Well, no, but I know how to help them. I said, no, you don't. The only person that can help them is them. And I'll get back to what I said before. The worst kind of advice to give is the kind that hasn't been asked for, because with your greatest intentions, even you, Zach, with your greatest intentions, if you start giving advice to people who aren't willing to receive it, then your best intentions are received with resentment. And so here you are trying to help somebody, and they resent you, right? You're creating a wall, not a bridge. And for them, it feels like it's an attack. You don't appreciate me and like me for who I am. And so what that does is that resentment creates this wall that ruins the relationship. You know what I mean? And so if there's people listening into this conversation, then hopefully, if they've just had the courage to go, you know what, I like Zach, I like what he's doing, I want to listen to his podcast, Who's he got on today? Tony Horton. Oh, I've heard about that P90X or that 22-minute hardcore or that P90X3 or his course, Living Large, or I've heard about his book, The Big Picture. I don't know. I don't really know much about the guy, but I'm going to listen in. Then maybe somewhere in the course of this conversation between you and I, they'll go, oh, geez, that makes sense. No wonder I'm stuck. I'm not doing anything. You got to be proactive. You've got to be proactive. And if you also understand that this is a journey, it takes time. It doesn't happen in weeks and months. Sometimes it happens in years and decades. But the journey is worth it because the journey is the best part. Those experiences, those interactions, those conversations, those lessons, those books I've read, those seminars I've been to, I'm building a history that will, over the course of time, because there is, of course, information, and then there has to be application. You can know about P90X, you can learn about P90X, you can have friends who talk about P90X, you can see the before and after pictures, you can see the lifestyle changes, but unless you do it, and you do it consistently, you know what I mean? I mean, consistency is everything. It wasn't like you just went to school occasionally. People who went to school occasionally got D's and F's. People who went to school every day and paid attention and took some notes and ended up doing better. Life is no different than school. It's the same thing. You have to be consistent. You have to pay attention. You have to be curious. And then there has to be application afterward. You have to go from bad behavior to good behavior. We are victims of our behavior. You know what I mean? We pick our problems. We can also pick our solutions. And if you can do that, if you're willing to go through the transformation and understand that the transformation is hard and that it takes time and that it's a journey and that you have to be present and you shouldn't be so attached to the outcome and all those types of simple things that I say all the time, then when you come out the other end, like, wow. And I mean, I've met so many people at Summit in New Orleans last week and at IDEA in Las Vegas just this last couple of days. And there's story after story after story after story with people with tears in their eyes and go, you don't understand who I was and who I am based on your programs, based on your course, based on your book. And, when you and I spoke earlier, you were saying to me, I'm a practical guy. I'm a lazy guy. I'm not, I'm not overly ambitious, but I certainly know how it feels to do the work. And the person I am now is the antithesis of the guy that I was before I did.
And that's what I think is so important and why I've gravitated to you specifically, because I have jumped into the deepest end of the personal development pool for years now, because I feel like if a day goes by where I haven't learned something or grown in some way, well, then I need to do better tomorrow. And I found you and stuck to you like glue, because it's like, oh, this is a practical guy. This is somebody that had his own struggles, but he just consistently does the work. And you had said earlier, my two favorite words that everybody listening that either is in my newsletter or in my programs, they know I love the words action steps. You can have all the information in the world. And I've had people come up to me and say, I'm such a huge fan of the podcast. I've listened to all 117 episodes. And I'll stop them and I'll say, great. What have you actually done? What have you implemented? Well, I've listened to all of them. Like, yeah, but I would rather you stopped listening. You pick one episode and just enact one thing. And I feel like that's the piece that so many people miss. And what I've also found is that when you give people a plan, and maybe this is something you've learned over the years of developing all these programs, you say, here's a 90-day calendar. Finish this in 90 days. They miss day 12 and they say, oh man, I failed. Well, I'm just going to give up. I just can't do this. But the piece that they're missing, and this is what I really have learned from you, probably more than anything, is purpose. If you find the purpose behind what you're doing, you define your why, missing day 12 of 90 doesn't mean anything anymore, or having a bad day or falling off the wagon, whatever it is, you can become consistent because you have defined a purpose. And you said before, your purpose is to help other people find their purpose. So let's help people build that foundational purpose and start defining their why so they don't worry about the details, but they can build some momentum.
Do you want me to talk about purpose, Zach, a little bit?
Yeah, I just want to help people understand, like, if I want to get started, what most people think is, all right, I need to download this productivity app, and then let me go on to the Beachbody website or whatever. Oh, well, I need this program for the next 90 days. I'm going to put this calendar up on the wall, and I'm going to check off the X's. But in my opinion, that's just the practical steps. That's just the stuff. That's the cosmetic work on the house, but you got to build the foundation first. And the foundation is your why and your purpose. So let's kind of help people through a couple of initial steps to actually help them figure out, what is this bigger reason why I want to do all this work?
Well, here's the thing. There's two categories of people, and obviously there's multiple categories in between, but I want to just, kind of break it up into two major categories. And the first one is people who are in, your simple survival mode. They're doing the basics, from the outside looking in, you would say, hey, they're doing okay. You would say that whatever their choices are were their choices, and they seem to be relatively content, because we always put on these faces that say, hey, man, everything's all right, and maybe I'm not living in the house I want to live in, and maybe I'm not living in the house I want to live in, and maybe I'm not the shape that I'd like to be. And, I know I should probably eat better, but I can't, my excuse is that I can't afford it. Or, the people that I'm around, I've known them forever, and they're sort of my friends and family, and I don't want to abandon them. But I'm not really all that curious about running out and meeting new people. Most people after high school and college, they don't, it's very rare that they meet new people. So they just kind of continue to hang around the same folks all the time. And these are the survivors, the people who pay their bills, the rent, their mortgage, They can get gas in the car. If the car breaks down, hopefully they can, 9 times out of 10 be able to afford to get the car fixed, And they get up in the morning and they go to their job and they work for somebody else. And they're okay. Their job, they're able to keep it, for the most part. And maybe they're staring at a wall, or they're inside of a cubicle, and they have their little moments at lunch where they can kind of, whatever about life or work or sports or politics. And then Friday comes along, and it's the single greatest day in the history of their life, because work is over, and work is just work. And then Saturday, they just savor Saturday. And maybe some people are out, out and about, and going to the movies or going to the park and playing with their kids, or a lot of them are just sitting on their ass and they're watching too much TV, but it's sure as hell much better than work. And then Sunday is basically the same version of Saturday, one way or the other. And then, then Sunday night, they're just dreading what Monday's going to bring, right? And so they'll do that for their life until they retire, until they're finished. And then, maybe or maybe not, they've saved enough money to be able to go, travel a little bit or whatever it is. But that's not most people, it's like, so there's various levels of that, even people who are relatively successful financially are still surviving because they've been eating crap their entire life. They haven't really exercised much at all. And now they're a victim of this body that they've neglected. Sure, they got stuff. They got a house and they got a car, a pretty nice car, and they got, some solid money in the bank. But they're 65, and the thought of exercise and changing their diet is impossible. And so they're miserable. Then there's another group of people, that sort of range and, from very wealthy to maybe just, have some decent income, but they're happy as can be, man. And their life is so interesting, and they've got such amazing people in their life. And, maybe the ones that don't really care about money are rock climbing and mountain biking and skiing and, entering 10Ks and half marathons and marathons. And they're just living so large, because their emphasis is more on the physical, because they figured it out somewhere along the way. Like, okay, I was an athlete in high school and college, and I'm going to continue to do so because I understand what that provided for me, and I don't really care about money. I'm gonna have a great job that I love. Maybe I manage a bike shop, or maybe I'm an owner of a rock climbing gym. I'm not a millionaire, but I've found the thing that I love, and I've honed in on that. And maybe initially when they were in that transitional stage, they had one of those crappy jobs, but they understood what their purpose was. They never lost sight of what that purpose was. Some people just stayed a hobby, or maybe it was a part-time job, and others were able to make that transition so that their purpose was their career. I'm very fortunate. I was a pantomime at the pier. I was a go-go dancer at Chippendales. I was a waiter. I was a statue at Oscar parties as the Oscar. I was a handyman and a plumber and electrician. I mean, I had every odd crappy job in the world, but I had always had my sights on entertainment. When I was an actor and I was a comedian. That wasn't a very good one, but at least I tried. You know what I mean? I opened up some doors and I went through and I fell on my face, and sometimes I learned something along the way. And so as I was pursuing this career as a trainer, while also pursuing a career as a entertainer, I became an entertaining trainer. And that's the reason why we've sold, 11 million copies of P90X, and I don't know how many, 1.4 million copies of P90X3. And, altogether, it's just 11, 12, 13 million copies of all my stuff. And, millions and millions of downloads of all my programs on Beachbody On Demand. So, I never lost sight of what it was that I wanted to do. And it took decades to do it. And so at some point, I always tell people, well, how do you what were the specifics of how you got there? And so if I can give you one example, I was reading The Magic Lamp by Keith Ellis, and Keith Ellis said, I want you to write down 20 things that you would love to do. Like, this would be who you are. President of the United States, first man to walk on the surface of Mars, to be a multi-billionaire. I mean, whatever, just, shoot for the stars on what you want to be. Like what you ultimately want to do, and if it would just be handed to you, 20 things, if it would just be, this is it. This is like, you can have it, rub the magic lamp, poof, that's who you are. And so write it down. Now I want you to write down another list of 20 things. But the caveat there is you have to work for it. I mean, the work discipline and the determination, your work ethic, surrounding yourself with people, putting in the time, putting in the hours, putting in the effort. What would be those 20 things? Now, theoretically, they would change, all right? But there would be some overlap. You know what I mean? Like President of the United States, if he was just going to hand it to you, or a billionaire if he was going to hand it to you, that was easy. But in the other category, you're going to have to work for these. And so, I'd like to be an engineer, or I'd like to own my own business, or, I'd like to be as fit as I could possibly be and run marathons and enter these, and be a triathlete or whatever it is. And so you would look at the two lists, you'd line them up, 20 on the left if they could be handed to you, 20 on the right if you're willing to do the work, and begin to make some decisions. So you've got number one, President of the United States. Number two, own my own business. Okay, I don't want to be the President of the United States. That'd be cool if they just gave it to me. You cross that one out and you go, own my own business, or I'm going to keep that. Then you look number two and number three, first man to walk on the surface of Mars. And number two in the second category would be to be as strong as I could be, to be physically fit. Okay, walking on Mars, right? So your list on the left, things that can be handed to you just because you got to wish for them. There might be one or two things that would survive that list. But on the other side, the ones you're going to work for, there'd probably be a lot more. And so you put those two lists, the ones that were actually practical, the things that you could actually physically do, the things that you might actually accomplish. And then you have to pit those against each other. All right, maybe on category number one, at list number one, there's one or two survivors over there. One would be to run a huge corporation. To run a huge corporation, or to be physically as strong as I could be. God, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to have both of those things, but you'd have to cross one out. And you can do this lesson over and over and over again. And the thing is, there are things that we want, and there are also things that we need. Things that are practical, things that are impractical. But somewhere along the line, somewhere along the way, if you spend, a couple hours on this, there are going to be certain things that are going to pop up over and over and over again. Now, for me, when I did that, it was always something physical. It was always something about helping people. It was always something about entertaining people. And it didn't necessarily always end up in the same order, but the same 3 or 4 or 5 things always came up. And ironically, years later, if you really look at what I do for a living, I'm in a kind of a silly guy, person that delivers fitness a little differently than everybody else. I like being silly and wacky. I mean, people label me America's Fitness Clown. That's fine. I'm okay with that title, But I have a style of cueing exercises, of teaching fitness that is somewhat silly, that is somewhat entertaining, that is very different. It's not, sort of this fundamental rhetoric. It's more of an entertaining style of rhetoric. And I think that's partly the reason why my stuff has worked so well. And this was my process. This is what I needed to do to find my purpose. So for everybody else out there that's listening in, who are just, they can look at themselves and go, okay, I'm not thriving. I'm not living a lifestyle where I'm eating healthy food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks. I'm exercising 5 to 6 days a week, and I have a career or a job that I love. That's not me. I'm definitely not that person. So I would say write your 2 lists, man. Write them down and figure out who you're supposed to be. And ironically, there's so many people who are just purely in the survival mode who aren't even taking advantage of what they really are. They're not really pursuing their purpose, And so a great example of this is, and I talk about it in my book, is there's a guy, he's a pretty good accountant. He's providing for his family, and he works for a pretty good firm, and he goes to work every day. But on Saturday and Sunday, he's always trying to make his way into the bicycle shop, locally in the neighborhood. And he knows a lot about bikes. He's loved them since he was a kid, mountain bikes, street bikes, any kind of a bike. He just loves getting on top of 2 wheels and cruising around. And he loves talking about it. And so his wife is pretty cool and says, honey, you work really hard, and if you want to run off to the bike store for a couple hours, go for it. You know what I mean? And so he ends up just talking to the manager and all the employees. And the manager finally comes up to him and says, you know more about everything bicycles than half my employees. Would you like to work, like on a Saturday or a Sunday? I could use you, you're fantastic. And he went back to his wife and he asked his wife, and his wife said, hey, you know what? We could use the extra income. You love it. You know what I mean? Sure. If you want to work, 4 extra days a month, and, just make sure you make time for me on Sunday or whatever it is. And so the guy goes in there, and 5 years later, he owns the place. You know what I mean? Just sort of, it's like he immersed himself into it part-time, just a little bit. He just he didn't ignore it. He didn't let 10, 20, 30 years go by, knowing what his purpose was, and just saying, you know what, I'm an accountant and that's it. And I'll never have the opportunity to own my own bike store. But just because he dove in just a little bit into the shallow end, working for this place. And then of course, he was the weekend manager. And then he had an opportunity. The owner said, I want to sell the store. You're really good. Why don't you give it a go? It was a big jump. Another perfect example is one that I had in my life. Bobby Stevenson, if anybody has P90X, he's in the chest and back routine in P90X. And a lot of people say he's my twin. And, he's a dear friend. He has been ever since. When he and I were working out in the old days, I asked Bobby, I said, dude, and he was an actor and he was, strong as could be. I said, I'd love you to be in my Power 90 routines. And so he goes, I've never been in a fitness video before. And he was kind of verklempt about it. I said, dude, you're going to be fine. We'll go through rehearsals. You'll do it. Right. So he went through Power 90 and then he went through P90X with me. And Bobby is an actor, you know what I mean? And he was also working retail. And so here was this guy, this super fit, super handsome, super talented guy, folding T-shirts all day in a retail store, going off to acting, doing his acting classes, going to his auditions. And he was not living his purpose. You know what I mean? And he'd get the occasional commercial, or he'd be in a play. He was in this fantastic play here in LA that ran for like 3 months. And I went and saw the thing 9 times. It's just great to go support your buddy. You know what I mean? So he had this job working retail. His mother owned the store, you know what I mean? And so but still he was an employee for his mom, and he lived in a little apartment, and, he had moments of happiness. But he was going to his acting classes, he was going to his auditions. He had the crap job, the survival job, but he was also pursuing, his career as an actor. And he was very fortunate along the way. He went to an audition, and there was this casting office, and they said, hey, Bobby, we really like you, man. I don't know if you'd be interested. I know you have this retail gig, but we would really like it if you would help manage this casting office. As opposed to folding T-shirts in a retail store. And he said, and he jumped on it. He jumped on that opportunity. And so, the money was a little bit better. His lifestyle improved a little bit. This was one of the many stages of going from a guy that was just surviving to looking to thrive. And so at one point, it was a couple who owned the casting agency. And they came to Bobby, who had never owned anything, never, a small business. He wasn't a small business owner. He didn't have a degree in that. He didn't know how to do that. And they say, Bobby, we're going to sell the business and we're going to offer it to you first. And I watched poor Bobby from P90X, chest and back, jump through hoops because he was so freaked out. Like, this was a major commitment. I am now the owner of this business. I have to make sure this thing is, running on all 8 cylinders. If it goes over, the thought of it was freaking him out, and he would talk to Scott Pfeiffer. He's another friend of mine who was also chest and back, oddly enough. And he goes, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is my thing. I've never been a business owner. I think it might, really slow down my acting career and blah, 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 blah. And we kept saying to him, I said, how are you going to know unless you try? If it goes to crap, it goes to crap. And, I know you're a guy, you're a hardworking guy. You got a tremendous work ethic. You've been managing this place for 5 years. You know the ins and outs of the thing. And I said, I'm the guy got to pay the mortgage. I'm the one that's got to, do the payroll for employees. I've never done any of those sort of things. I said, so you just keep asking questions. Your dear friends are the 2 people who own the business. Just keep asking questions. And it wasn't hard. And he was really freaked out, but he ended up doing it. And the business is 5 times more profitable than it was when he was just managing it and not controlling it from top to bottom. And by the way, he still gets to act. He's got somebody else who manages it, so he doesn't have to be there, all the time. He still gets to go on his auditions. And so now he runs the place. Now he owns the place. Now he bought a beautiful place. Now he has a really nice car. Then, he was able to ask his girlfriend to marry him and get engaged and buy a nice ring. And, he has a completely different life. And that took years for all that to go down. You know what I mean? And so, you've got the guy who liked bikes and now he owns the store. I got a guy who was an actor who was, never owned a small business in his life. And now he gets to have both. And so you have to getting back to, you've got to stay curious. You've got to learn to say the word yes and stop saying no. And, opportunities will arrive. They will emerge. They will make themselves present to you if you're willing to take those types of chances, if you're willing to open up those kinds of doors, if you're willing to read personal development books, if you're willing to check out seminars by various people in this industry like Brendon Burchard and Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra and others, and just put down the $350 it's going to take and buy the airplane ticket and go to the hotel and show up at the seminar and learn a few things and take some notes and starting to apply those things to your life. And then what ends up happening is you become different because you've got more information, and the things that you used to do, you don't want to do anymore. And the people you used to hang around with who weren't going anywhere, you don't see them as much. And you begin emerging as somebody who is physically strong, mentally strong, emotionally strong, who's willing to pursue the kind of lifestyle that you want, to have the career that you want to have the people in your life that you want to be with, to be in the relationship that you want to be in. And it's a journey and it takes time, but it's doable. Any person can do it. Anyone can do it. I mean, a C- student with a speech impediment who had the ambition of a snail in mud in a hurricane, that was me, man. And so it's an awesome ride, and there are going to be some pitfalls, and there's going to be some left and right turns, and there's going to be some walls in the way. But, row your boat gently down the stream, and life can be but a dream.
Yeah, and I want to second, third, fourth, everything that you said. And one thing that I want to add is when it comes to purpose specifically, it took me a while to figure this out, and I'm still figuring it out. But purpose to me has become my safety net. I decided I want to go out on a limb. I want to start a podcast. I want to change the way things are done in my industry. I want to help people that are sedentary all day long, stuck in front of a computer, doing creative work. I want to get them moving again and eating better and treating themselves with the respect that they deserve. And that was a big leap for me. I was, just a keyboard monkey behind a computer editing TV shows. But when I defined my purpose, that became my safety net. And that was my safety net for failure. Because anybody that's been around since the beginning of me starting this program, they've done nothing but consistently read my emails every week and watched me fail over and over and over and over. But I get a little bit better every time. And one of the biggest things I had to let go of was being a perfectionist. What I learned was that I was a perfectionist because that was an excuse to not do anything. That was an excuse to not put myself out in the world. That was an excuse to procrastinate because I would say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I can't do it until it's perfect. And I see people doing the same thing with exercise programs, with diet, with, like, for example, with my Move Yourself program, that I've decided that I wanted to create a bridge between living completely sedentary and doing P90X or even P90 or 22-minute hardcore. It's like I want to give people that bridge where they just start moving some, they feel a little better, and they say, wow, I feel good enough to start an exercise program. But people will say to me when I ask them, hey, I reached out, I wanted you to join and you didn't. And they'll say, you know what? Your program looks amazing. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I'm going to fail. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. And I don't want to spend the money and invest. And to me, purpose is that safety net that allows for failure.
I like it, man. I like it.
So I want to be respectful of your time, and we have a few more minutes. And I have to be honest, if somebody had told me 3 years ago that I was about to talk to Tony Horton about skincare products, I would have said, there's no way that's ever going to happen. But yet, here we are. I got to ask, let's talk about your new skincare line, because I promised that I would let people know about it, because it's frankly is awesome. And I'm not into skincare, beautification, not my thing, but this stuff is amazing. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Skincare, why in the world? I've always been sort of self-conscious, not always, but especially in the last maybe 25 years. I've got a little eczema, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's fun. I love having that at 59. Also, having burnt my skin to a crisp when I came out to California, I was always under the impression that, the browner I was, the sexier I was. I don't know, man. So, but there's consequences to that. I didn't discover that till it was too late. And I met this guy by the name of Patrick Dockery, and he owns his own skin and hair care company down in Orange County. It's a little bit south of where I am here in LA. And, he came to my house one day, and I was on his TV show, and I was on the cover of his magazine, and we got talking about, sort of what I had done to my skin. He goes, I got stuff for you. I got formulations for you. Because my hair is shockingly at the age of 59. I don't know. My father had a full head of hair. My mother had this like thick, and maybe it's because we're Italian culture. I don't know what it was, but I'm very fortunate to have thick hair, full head of hair. But, it grows straight out. It's like Brillo. And so I had sort of a hair and skin issue, and we got talking. He goes, I got stuff for both. I'll give you these essential oils you can put in your hair, and I can give you this stuff for your skin that has a really decent pH. And I go, what is that pH? I go, what does that mean? You know what I mean? And he would explain to me that the average person has, their skin and hair is about 4.5 to 5.5 pH, and pH balanced. And a lot of products are just purely sold based on fragrance, and their pH is all over the place, and so people end up with oily skin or dry skin. You know what I mean? Because they got to put all different kinds of funky stuff in there to smell a certain way or to feel a certain way, but it has nothing to do with the quality of the product. So I got talking to him, and he would send me boxes and boxes of his stuff. So I was just talking to my wife, Shauna, one day, and I said, hey, what if I asked Patrick to make me a couple of simple things to formulate for my kind of, because I've got red marks and brown marks and dry spots and blah, blah, blah. It all comes with aging and having burnt my skin all those years. And he says, I got you covered. And then we made two products. One was called Workout, and the other one was called Fitness. One was for your hair, and the other one was for your face and body lotion. One was sort of a shampoo. And we put it out into the world. You know what I mean? We don't have any money for media. It was all kind of social media, and people like, Tony Horton's doing skincare. Where is he out of his mind? But the reviews kept coming back. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. You know what I mean? So we expanded the line. We've got 5 products now. Nourish is the oil that he gave me back in the day, and it's just so great for my hair and for my skin. Especially, I get dry, and my lower legs get really dry, my arms get really dry, and then Nourish and also my lotion Fitness have just done wonders for me. And so we put it out into the world, and people just love it. You know what I mean? It's pH balanced, like I said. There's no parabens or sulfates in there. It's not animal tested. It's Prop 65 compliant, so it's made here in California. It's whole food compliant. And it's just, there's a lot of things like Resurrection Plant in there and aloe and all the good stuff that you'd want. But there's also science behind what it is. It's not just, aloe and, pure aloe, because that won't work. It'll dry out a lot of people's skin. So, it's really a combination of both nature and science. And I appreciate your positive feedback. We're getting that kind of across the country. And it's called TH Care. And you can go to TonyHortonLife.com That's life, Life, not live. And it's all right there. Another adventure that I'm obviously too, if I could plug anything here in the last few minutes is, and you've started my course, Living Large with Brendan Bouchard. My wife wanted to review the course. She was actually there when we were shooting it, but everything is in bits and pieces. Then when they finally got the editing and the music and all of it together and all the worksheets together, my wife did the course and she's been incredibly productive. Not that she wasn't, but it was just, she's like, I can't believe it. I watch this and I just want to go. I want to do, I want to be, I want to live, and that's the whole idea. We took 6 elements out of the book, the big picture, 11 laws that'll change your life. And we took 6 that we really thought would apply to a course. And the whole idea here is to go from stuck to productive. And that's just it. Like it's just fast and furious, yet simple intel that you plug into your mind and you're writing down the things that apply to you, the things that you need to do, the action steps that you need to take. And it's all right there inside of your head based on the things that you've written down that apply to you and where you need to go and what you need to do, whatever category it is, And so Living Large was a great adventure. It was so fun to work with Brendan Bouchard directly. We shot this in his house for 4 days. It was really amazing. And then last but not least, not that there's 22-minute hardcore. You can go to Tony Horton Life and get that. I know you're a real fan of that program. It's a boot camp program. It's 8 weeks. And there's a 9th optional, Hell Week, but why would you not want to do that? And that's also my wife's favorite program because, she's like me, not a real fan of exercise. You know what I mean? Like, how can I get in and get out? And, for me, I don't like getting in, but once I'm in, I'll do it for 2 hours because, I'm just because I just love starting is always a drag. I got to put on my stuff and I'd rather just take a nap or I'd rather just continue, answering emails. But once I'm in, I don't mind doing P90X or X2. Those are kind of, just takes me some time. What with Shauna, it's like, hey, look, this is not my favorite thing in the world. But once she got into 22-minute hardcore, she's like, geez, it's just so effective. And her results were off the chain. And you don't need any stuff. You know what I mean? You really don't need, a sandbag if you want it, but you don't need it. You can use a couple of dumbbells. It's mostly body weight exercises. It's boot camp, man. And last but not least is TH Apparel. And so I've had these 2 T-shirts that I had made. I had about 500 of them, and I'd give them away. You know what I mean? And one is called TH Fitness, and on the back it says Indoor Training for the Outside World, and the other one is TH Life, and it says Do Your Best and Forget the Rest. And so I thought, well, let's finally get these things up online, and we've got them on Amazon. And we did a quick run. We had about 450 shirts, and we sold out like in 2 days, man. And so right now we had no idea. I figured, I don't want to make 2,000, 5,000 shirts and have them sitting around. And I was just really shocked by the level of enthusiasm for them. We've still got some women left. We've got extra small, smalls, and mediums. For women online, 3 great colors. And for the men, it's basically extra larges. But if you want the T-shirts, again, TonyHortonLife.com. We're actually, right after this meeting, after you and I finish, we're going to run to a place here in town in LA to see if they're going to be the ones that manufacture our shirts. Because these shirts are beautiful. They're tech shirts. They wick well. They're 4-direction stretch. Everybody seems to like the shape and design. And we don't want to just slap these logos on just anything, So we're going to go meet with some people here in LA that might be able to duplicate the shirt, because the shirt that we used, they don't make anymore. So they think they can do it. And so that's it. I've had 21 failed businesses, mouth guards, insoles, 5 TV pilots, food in 7-Eleven, home delivery food. I wrote them all down, 21. Oh my God. The lawyer's fees alone would have bought a small cottage. But the idea here is, so what? So what? Right now we're doing really well with TH Care. We're thrilled. Like finally the 23rd business is doing well. The T-shirts are selling well. Beachbody handles all of those products, thank God. P90X, X2, X3, Hardcore, P90, Power 90, Holicacano. And the last thing that I want to talk about is Beachbody On Demand. If you're the age of putting DVDs into a player is not that far from your 8-track tape into that player, or your cassettes or your records. Everything has gone digital. Everything is instant. And Beachbody On Demand is simple. It's on your phone. It's on your laptop. It's on your TV if you want. And you can go to Beachbody On Demand and sign up and you get your stuff. There's 600 workouts on Beachbody On Demand. I've got 120 of my workouts on Beachbody On Demand. It's direct to you instantly the minute you want to do it. I mean, P90X alone was $130. You can go on Beachbody On Demand. I think they have an offer right now where I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but for $100, you get 600 workouts, and there's new ones coming out all the time for a year, and you're also getting Energize and Recover, the two performance products, which is insane. That's just this like, I don't know how we make any money doing that, but we're just trying to get people to make that transition. Less than a year ago, 60% of our customers were using DVDs and only 40 were doing on demand. In the course of 6 months, that's flipped. It's like people are like, it's all like within 6 months, like, what am I doing with DVDs? What am I, from the 70s? This is insane. And we think in the course of the next year, it'll be more 80-20. There'll be 20% of people still using DVDs, but that's the future, man. So hop on board. You have access to so much content there. It's just an absolute excuse killer. And so that's my pitch at the end. But the reason why I do that is because the course is part of your transformation. These programs are part of your transformation. TH Care is a chance for you to sort of, improve the quality of your hair and skin if you're having those issues, because it's, whole food compliant, because it's pH balanced, because it's non-animal tested, because it's made in the USA. Let's support an American company here, small business. And the T-shirts, that's just a way to represent, a way to say, hey, I'm a fan of Tony Horton's philosophies and his ideas and products, and I'm wearing his, and the shirts are beautiful and the colors are cool, and you might want to, you can get it all at TonyHortonLife.com.
Nice. Well, as you were listing off all those different things, I was going through all of the businesses that I failed at, and I realized I'm only up to like 5 or 6. So I'm going to have to let you go because I have a lot more failing to do today, tomorrow, and beyond, but all towards that larger purpose. So TonyHortonLife.com, that's the action step for today. I want everybody to go check out this stuff because like you're the voice that's screaming in my face first thing every single morning, if it's not my children, of course, and I keep coming back for more. And if you haven't used it yet, the term would be entertainer. So you're an entertainer.
Nice. Well done. Nice hype.
You can have that for free.
All right.
Because you're my entertainer. I love it. So on that note, I cannot thank you enough for taking an hour out of your day to spend it with me and my audience. It means the world to me. So thank you so much.
Well, Zach, you're good people. You're helping people. And I like you, dude. You're doing all right. So any way I can help, I'm glad to do it. Thanks for having me on.